now that I work in wholesale, I get to see all of that, and it's really cool to see. It's, like I said, I love when shipments come in. I mean, you know what you got coming because you have a packing list, but not everything looks the same. So if you order, like, let's say 500 Duncan heads from Australia or whatever, different colonies that come in are like, some of them look weird, some of them look different, they have different patterns, they have different fluorescence. All in all, they're all Duncans, but every coral's different. So if you order like 50 war corals, every war coral's not going to look the same. You get some that have some colors that you haven't seen before.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Coral Reef Talk podcast. I'm Joey Jones, and joined with me is...
Hey, guys, I'm Levi Peterson from Oddball Reefer.
Yes, and today we're going to be talking all about like coral fish wholesaling and kind of what it takes to do that. All right, so Levi, you're actually working at a wholesaler currently, right?
Yes, I am.
There's a lot of things that we may or may not know about wholesaling, like what it takes to do that job, or like what that even looks like. Because wholesalers, you're getting fish and corals imported in, and then you have to obviously take care of them, treat them, get them ready for sale and stuff like that. So what does that kind of look like?
So we'll start off. First off, wholesaling, I mean, it's a fun job, it can be, but it can also be pretty stressful and tiring at times, because specifically with like shipments, fish, coral, anything really, they can get delayed or they can get pushed to a different day depending on flights, and that can really mess with your schedule. So it is sometimes hard to keep a schedule, because I'm more of a person that would like to keep a schedule and kind of do the same, not the same exact thing, but kind of have a schedule that I do every single day. But it's hard to do that sometimes, when shipments kind of fluctuate. And it gets a little stressful sometimes, especially like when you find out last second, like, hey, it got delayed. Tack on a couple more hours, do something else. But I mean, that's really the life of a wholesaler. I mean, you just got to be flexible. You got to be understanding, and you got to be willing to put in some extra hours. And that's not going to be every week, but there's weeks, a few weeks in a row, sometimes even, that are pretty hectic, and you got a lot of shipments coming in. So yeah, it's definitely not for the regular hobbyist. And I will say this too. It can definitely like tire you out as far as hobby wise. Like, it's sometimes the last thing that I want to do when I come home is to mess with some of my aquariums and keep them clean and maintain those, because I already am responsible for tanks at work, and there's a bunch of other responsibilities that involve fish, coral, and all that sort of stuff. So when I get home, it's sometimes definitely like almost like a burnout. Like, it's like, oh man, I got to clean the tanks. So I've kind of figured it out to where I do the tanks on Friday. Every Friday I get home. My wife's still at work, so I take some time dedicated to my tanks, get them all clean for the week, and that's typically what I do. But back to wholesaling, it is definitely not for the weak-hearted. You got to have some passion. You got to just be willing to fluctuate with whatever goes on, because I mean, things can change just like that. I mean, it's pretty intense, but it can also be super fun. I love shipments. I love when they come in. You see different stuff all the time. Nothing's ever really the same.
Okay.
Obviously, you get like the same fish, but sometimes you get different patterns, or you get a few fish here and there that you've never seen before. Especially with corals and inverts, you get some weird inverts and definitely some weird corals. Sometimes I get to do a lot of the coral ordering, so super fun. Kind of get to order what I want just to kind of see how it does and sales. It's an overall fun job, but you definitely got to be ready to put in some extra hours and be very flexible as far as your schedule goes and stuff.
Yeah, and now speaking to your schedule, like you mentioned, Fridays is when you do tank stuff, because I can imagine, and we'll probably get into it more about some job specifics, but like you're around corals and fish all day, every day, sometimes probably like real late at night, like you're talking about with shipping. So you don't really want to mess with your tanks, but Friday's your day. Is Friday like always your day? Do you always have that day, or can the job sometimes take over that day and then it changes?
So there is definitely, especially a few shipments recently, it got pushed to a Friday. Normally, the specific shipment is on Thursdays, and it gets pushed to Fridays every so often, depending on flights. I mean, you can't really do much about it. So when that happens, yes, I'm not able to do my tanks because sometimes that shipment gets back late, and I'm stuck working late on Friday nights, which is okay. I mean, whatever. Um, but obviously, I have to push my tanks back and try to figure out a different day, or maybe get up early the next morning and try to knock them out. Because I mean, I have like 7 tanks in my house, so if I kind of just let them sit and not do much of anything with them, they're going to start crashing. Especially with my nano tanks and stuff, you got to kind of keep them topped off and such. So it's definitely a lot of work here at the house. But Fridays, as long as they work out as much as they do, makes it kind of easy. I just knock them all out, and they stay clean throughout the week. And I just do them every Friday, if at all possible.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm about to add a few more tanks to my what I have going on. I just have the 125 right now, so seven tanks. Yeah, you got a lot going on. How many tanks do you have at the facility? Like, how big is the facility?
It's relatively large. We got a large freshwater section. That's kind of how the business started off. I work for Quality Goldfish, by the way, in Clearwater, Florida, or QGI Aquatics. They originally started off with goldfish back in the 90s. I believe it was the 90s. Don't quote me on that. And then they kind of branched out into some more freshwater fish, and then eventually saltwater, and then corals. And then that's kind of where I came in.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, the facility is quite large. We got, I want to say, like right now we have 8 big coral like frag tanks. They're pretty shallow. They're just kind of like a big lagoon tank, but they have like egg crate racks in them. Pretty simple. You can pull them out and put them back in. You clean them and keep them clean. But yeah, there's probably at least, I want to say at least over 1,000 gallons worth of corals.
Nice. Okay.
Not more. I'm not exactly sure on the exact number, but we got at least the same in saltwater fish and probably more in freshwater. So there's a lot of water to work with.
Mm-hmm.
We mix most of our own salt water. I mean, that's fun at times too. You got to keep up with that. Make sure you have water at all times, because sometimes there's incidents where something's going on in one of the tanks. You got to do a large water change, or you got to decide what you need to do. And obviously, with that much water, you're gonna have a lot of evaporation as well. So you're gonna have to keep the tanks topped off constantly, and just keep up with all the parameters and salinity, and just make sure everything's a-okay as much as you can. So, yeah.
Nice. So do you guys have like automation set up in place that handles those things, or are you constantly manually auto top offing or manually top offing and stuff like that?
So the topping off is pretty much manual. It's
Okay.
a little, especially with the scale of what the tanks are, it's definitely challenging. I mean, we could probably make it to where you have an auto top off, but we don't entirely have the space to do so right now. We are
Gotcha.
currently expanding, so there will be more space available down the road here soon. But right now, it's just, I mean, we kind of have the same hose. We top off everything with just the fresh water, salt water, fresh water, whatever you
Mm-hmm.
need. And we just use the same water for all of it. And that's really
Okay. Cool.
I mean, it's pretty simple. You just got to like take the hose from someone else every so often when you're topping
Yeah.
off stuff. But so
Yeah. So take us through, I guess, like a typical day, because you were talking about how I guess this job may not be for everyone, because you have people that want to they've experienced the hobby side, so they want to jump into the wholesaling side, and get a job in the industry and then move through. And you've been with a couple wholesalers now, and so you've seen those processes. Is it about the same wholesaling from where you've been to where you are now?
So I used to work retail. That's kind of how I got into the hobby. I started off at a little pet store, and then kind of branched out from there. Pardon my dog. I'm sorry. Definitely not nearly, like, I work a lot more hours than ever, which is fine. I enjoy what I do. But retail, there's quite a bit of work in retail as far as keeping up with everything. But wholesale is a totally new level because you got to think a wholesaler is supplying multiple different retailers. So you got to think that at a retail store, you're not exactly to the scale of a wholesaler because the wholesaler is providing multiple retail stores. So it's a lot of work. And when I say it's not for the faint of heart, I mean like I like to get up early to begin with, but I also need to get up really early to beat a lot of the traffic to get to work because I live in Plant City and it's a long drive to Clearwater. So if I don't wake up at a certain time, it's definitely challenging to actually get to work on time because traffic builds so fast in Tampa. So probably get up at like 4:30 most mornings if I can. Sometimes
that's super early.
But usually I get to work around 6:30.
Okay.
Some days it's 7, depending on what we got going on for the day. I get there. I like to kind of check on everything. The first thing in the morning, I get there, turn on all the lights, get everything going. Check on all my corals, make sure there's nothing, like that has died off or anything that's gone wrong in any of the systems. Just to make sure everything's good, everything's topped off. Try to get everything done before like we get it, like everyone comes in, we start packing. So typically after I get done checking on everything, if no one's there yet, I usually kind of uncover the saltwater systems and start pulling if there's any like dead fish or anything, which I mean, it happens. There's no getting around it. We do treat all of our fish and everything, but you never know what you're going to get. Some fish come in rough and some fish come in great. And obviously there's going to be loss. So pull dead. Then after that, people like more coworkers start showing up, and then we kind of get into the packing mode. We do most of our packing in the morning for our deliveries. So I tend to help with that. Unless we have some extra staff, then I get to kind of mess with the corals all day. We do a lot of packing, and once we're done with packing, usually I go out to the coral room and I mess with corals, do some fragging. Mondays, most of the time, I pack a customer in the morning, and then I kind of spend some time in the coral room and do some work and get some frags cut up. That way they're ready for the week. I run some coral specials for the week, and then trying to go on with the typical day of like keeping the tanks clean, checking on the parameters, fragging, organizing stuff, moving things around in case there's a shipment coming in. You got to condense some stuff, move some stuff to different tanks, make room for more coral depending on how much coral you got coming in. Sometimes you got to clear out a couple of tanks and condense 2 tanks into 1. So I mean, it's fun, but sometimes it can definitely get stressful. Sometimes you find out a shipment's coming a little earlier than you expected, and sometimes, I mean, if you have to, you got to stay after a little bit. If you had a super busy day, lots of customers and stuff, just got to stay after, get a few extra things done, make sure everything's ready for the next day. Sometimes it stinks, but I mean, it makes the next day a lot easier if you have everything prepared and ready to go.
Yeah, for sure. Now, sorry. Does what was I gonna say? Do you get shipments every single day?
There is weeks where we get shipments every single day. Yes.
Okay, because when you're talking packing for a customer, you're talking about other stores, obviously. So those orders are, I would imagine, pretty big. So how long does it take you to pack like a single customer? How many people do you have packing one customer, or like something like that?
Okay, so when we're packing, usually it's pretty much all hands on deck. We all just take the order. We all start pulling stuff. We have a coworker that clips, like we have a clip machine, clip the bags, put them in the boxes. But usually it's all hands on deck. We're all packing. We're all like, we got a little system. We check things off. We go grab it, make sure like the stuff that we're sending out is healthy. Make sure we're pulling good quality stuff. But depending on the order, there's times where it takes up to like 30 minutes to pack one order, if not more. Like there's some pretty large orders that come in, and it does take a while, especially if you're making sure you're getting the best quality possible. So yeah, it takes some time, but once we're all kind of in a groove and going, we get stuff done pretty quick. We do start early, so we have stuff done pretty early as well. That way we have time to kind of clean up the shop and keep stuff clean and looking good throughout the week. So, yeah.
Nice. So now, whenever you pack for the customers, do you ship corals out as well as local pickups? I'm sure. Is it a
Mhm.
mix or
Yeah,
okay?
so we do local pickups. We have walk-ins as well, and then we do ship outs. So a lot of the ship outs, depending on when flights leave and stuff, we usually check on flights. And sometimes the customer has a specific flight that they want the stuff on to get stuff at a certain time. So we got to be flexible in that aspect as well. But normally we have a day for like each area around us that we do local deliveries. So we try to pack all the local deliveries in the morning. That way, that's all done. And then we usually have lunch break and get some cleaning done, some other stuff, and then we jump into some shippers, which we call them shippers.
Mm-hmm.
Those are like out of state or just opposite side of states where you have to ship stuff out. Um, and we usually use a lot of air cargo. We use some UPS depending on the customer and what they want. Yeah, it all depends. Like I said, it's pretty hectic at times, especially when you have walk-ins as well. That's a whole nother factor. So sometimes we have like 4 or 5 customers in there at once. So we have a system. We use color-coded buckets. So when they're like pulling fish, they each have their own color bucket, and when they're bringing them up to the packing table, we say, "Hey, like the yellow one's this place, the blue one's this place." So that way we
Okay.
know, and it's pretty self-explanatory, which is what. So
Very cool. What's the easiest part about working wholesale?
easiest part about
The
working
easiest thing
wholesale.
that you do? Yeah.
Easiest thing that I do. Let's see. I say packing. I love packing.
Okay.
Like it's fun because you're like picking fish and you're like, oh, like these are gonna be in the store. And I love
Mm-hmm.
when I pick fish and corals even. And sometimes when I go to like a local fish store or something, I see something that I picked and it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like that's just sweet to see that in a store now. And I've seen sometimes where I've went to stores and like I've seen a retail customer buying something that I sent the store, and it's pretty cool to see that.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Pretty amazing. But
That's awesome. What's the hardest thing about working in wholesale?
so hardest thing sometimes is I usually require a lot of sleep, and there's nights sometimes where I work in the morning and in the afternoon, then I come home for a few hours. Depending on the shipment, maybe more than a few hours. So we get shipments that come in literally to the middle of the night. Um, and then you got to like kind of wake up and go back in. There's been times where I have somehow hit snooze without knowing and not made it to an unpack. That's happened a couple times now.
Oh
Uh,
no! So you missed it completely?
I've missed some unpacks on
Oh
accident
no!
because sometimes, like, usually if I come home, I try to stay awake the whole time because I know if I like I'm sitting on the couch or something and fall
Hmm.
asleep and
If you're
forget to
out,
sleep with
you're
my
out.
alarm, you're out. Like
Yeah.
you're already exhausted, so I just try to keep up, make it a long day, get some things done, and then go back to work for a little bit, come back, sleep, and then usually
Hmm.
go in a little later the next day.
Yeah, I know that feeling, man. I used to work overnight at a couple different jobs and just like working. Well, it's kind of opposite, but still working all night and then sleeping during the day and trying to wake up and get back to work and do it all night again. And
Yeah.
sometimes you're just like snooze button, snooze. I just want to
Yep.
sleep. Yeah.
And it's never the same either. So it's not
Yeah.
like you have a specific night of the week where you're like staying up super late to do an unpack or something. Like it fluctuates depending on flights, like I said, because flights aren't the same every single week. Like they change
Hmm.
times and they change flights.
Yeah.
So
Flight delays, I'm sure, of course.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Everything plays a part.
yeah,
Yeah. That sounds like the most challenging part, like
yeah,
not knowing when something's coming in and then you just get a call at the middle of the night, say, hey, we just got however many boxes of fish here. We got to put them in.
yeah. And I mean, there's times where it's not even the flights. It's like when um, it has to get cleared at an airport by Fish and Wildlife. They inspect the boxes, make sure we're not like importing something that we shouldn't be importing. And there's species that you obviously can't import Florida, like lionfish, the volatile lionfish specifically. You can still get like the little Fumanchu lionfish and the dwarf lions, but no volatiles. Obviously, there's a problem with volatiles in Florida. They're all over the place, and they're a big problem on the reefs here. And there's a few other species as well that you're not allowed to mess with, especially in the freshwater realm. because obviously Florida's a tropical state, at least the bottom half. And a lot of those tropical fish from overseas can live and propagate in the local waters here. And we have that in most of Florida with plecos. We can still carry them. Not exactly sure how that all plays out. Um, yeah, I honestly don't know. But there's certain things that make sense and certain things that don't. So I don't know. There's some weird rules. But yeah, I mean, wholesale's fun, like I said, but there's definitely times where it's hard and confusing, and it's hard on your body and in your mind sometimes. Like when you're up all night, and it's pretty intense sometimes. But I really
Yeah,
enjoy it.
that's awesome. So do you, is there, well, I guess I already touched on automation, but I was going to say you guys manually test everything. How often do you test uh, the tanks? Are you testing them multiple times a day, or you wait a few days? Like, how does that
So
work out?
I test the coral tanks twice a week, usually every
Okay.
Tuesday and Thursday, and sometimes on Friday, just to like check on them, make sure everything's gonna be good for the weekend. We have a person that comes in on the weekends and checks on everything. He knows what he's doing, so he knows what to look for and everything. And if anything ever needs to be done or like something needs to happen, he'll let us know or he'll take care of it. So that's always nice. Um, but yeah, I mean, I test twice a week unless there's something weird going on in the water and I try to figure it out. I do have an apex on one of the coral systems. We're slowly adding more things to kind of amp up the coral room. And here soon we'll be adding a whole nother frag run, so I'm super excited about that. So I'm slowly trickling in things to try to like help. But there's definitely, even with all those systems, you still got to do manual work like testing the water, because I mean you can't trust a mechanical or a technology. I mean, it's accurate, but you never know, like something could be going wrong or a technical failure that you're not
Hmm.
aware of and such. And I've had that happen with auto top offs and like the hobby, like in
Yeah,
my own tanks, where they malfunction and they dump a bunch of fresh water and they've killed stuff. And I mean, you're kind of playing with fire, really. I mean, you never know because things could fail any second.
yeah, yeah. Like at home, I use a reef bot on my tank, but I also back those tests up by using Salifert test kits.
Yep.
So you always kind of got to check that and monitor that to
Yeah.
make sure
So
it's right.
usually, so Tuesdays and Thursdays, I test with the Soliferts, and then I usually compare it to the Apex, and it's a hair off sometimes. I mean, most of the time it's pretty right on, but there's
Hmm.
times where it's just a little bit off. So it's like, okay, like at least the Apex is still good, and I obviously I calibrate it when it needs calibration, and you switch out the testing fluids when it needs changed out. But I mean that definitely helps, and it's good because I can literally look at the parameters when I'm sitting at home, which is always nice. So it'd be nice to eventually get one of those on every single coral system. But
Yeah,
obviously that's a lot of money. So I mean, little by little, I've been kind of adding some more stuff to the coral room. So
that's awesome. So what's one thing that is there something new that you've learned recently from working in wholesale? Something that has added to your knowledge, like being in the hobby and stuff like that?
so I have a little more respect for like certain corals that I used to keep when I was working retail. Um, I have a lot more respect for now because when I'm seeing them coming from the wild and I see how bad they come in sometimes, it really makes me think of, okay, like, because there's certain retail or wholesales that we'd order from before that like we'd get stuff in and be like, man, they really just sent that to me like that. Like, so we get corals in sometimes, and even fish that come in really rough. And it really depends. I mean, sometimes like there's so many factors that really play into it. Like what we were talking about earlier, delays. Sometimes just getting like tossed around a little bit, especially fragile corals and sensitive fish. Some corals come in like damaged, and sometimes they come in a little broken, especially some of the more fragile corals. So I like to hold on to some of those corals a little longer and let them sit and kind of heal up. Dip them, do some bacterial infection stuff. Try to make sure it's the healthiest coral possible.
Now, what's the quarantine processes for like wholesalers, or is there one? Like you mentioned, um, like treating fish as they come in. Is that responsibility mostly on retailers, because you're getting fish and corals in and they're going out so quickly, or do you have a holding period?
So we don't necessarily have a holding period. Obviously, there's certain fish, and when we have walk-ins, we don't really have the space really to do
Gotcha, gotcha.
that entirely. A lot of the stuff sits for a couple days most of the time, and it's really like the retails know, like the retailers that come in to purchase things know, like, hey, this system is new. I like we treat all of our systems, the fish systems that is. So there's like copper, nitro,
Hmm.
all that sort of stuff, like kicking out the parasites if there's anything
Okay.
on them. So when we get new shipments in, we clear out a whole system, clean it all up, make sure there's nothing in it, and then we add the new shipment in there. Obviously, you drop like the pH levels to the bag, approximately what the bag would be, and then you add the fish in. And like for say the next day, everyone knows like, okay, this is the new system. These just came in, like so people are aware, just in case. But a lot of our stuff comes in really, really great. We have some
Okay.
really amazing suppliers, and we hardly ever have any issues with anything. So retailers are pretty comfortable coming in and picking out stuff, even sometimes if it's like the next day.
Okay. Very
So
cool. So I mean, the water's treated and everything, so
yes.
there is some level of at least fighting against something that could come in, and
Mhm.
then the retailers, they'll choose to take it to the next level if they have a holding period, and then they put them out. So okay, very cool.
Yeah, and like one of the things is like, especially for wholesalers. I mean, if you have the space, great. But a lot of the times when you're getting in as much volume, especially as we do, it's very challenging to be able to like set a whole system and like let it sit for weeks on end. Like it's really challenging for a wholesaler to really do that. And I mean, if you have the space, that's awesome. But it's definitely challenging when you don't have like the huge amount of space to be able to have multiple quarantine systems. Um, yeah, I mean it's different. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
but
because that's your order just sitting there,
yeah,
and so you're trying to order it to get it out to retailers, and so yeah, you can't have it sitting there too long. So yeah, that makes sense.
yeah. When I first got into wholesale, it was definitely different. Obviously, I said I worked retail, but it was just it was a great experience just to see what wholesale is all about. Because I was always curious when I was a retailer. I'm like, man, if we're getting all these fish, like what, like fish and corals, like what are the wholesalers getting? Like they're getting multiple different colonies. So now that I work in wholesale, I get to see all of that, and it's really cool to see. It's like I said, I love when shipments come in. I mean, you know what you got coming because you have a packing list, but not everything looks the same. So if you order like let's say 500 Duncan heads from Australia or whatever, different colonies that come in are like some of them look weird, some of them look different. They have different patterns, they have different fluorescence. All in all, they're all Duncans, but every coral is different. So if you order like 50 war corals, every war coral is not going to look the same. You get some that have some colors that you don't haven't seen before, and that's with really any coral. Even fish, sometimes you order a bunch of fish, you get a few fish that have some weird patterns to them, or some that are like piebald or like koi tangs and stuff. You get some that come in that are pretty weird, strange looking, like mutant fish, pretty much. It's pretty cool. You get some weird ones in sometimes, but yeah, so it's definitely fun.
Hmm. Cool. Yeah. Do you get whenever you order corals, do they come in on frag plugs from the importers, or do you just get like a lot of colony or whole pieces? Or I guess it depends on what your
So
order is, right? And
yeah,
then
it depends on what and where I'm ordering from. Like we get some stuff in that's maricultured, and that's going to be on like the well, most of the
on
maricultured
the
stuff is
rock,
from Indonesia, but it's kind of like a clay rock base.
yeah.
And you get like acros, torches, and multiple other different species of corals in the mariculture disc. We get quite a bit of mariculture torches and euphilia, hammers, frog spawns, all that sort of stuff. Um, and then we get a lot of wild colonies from both Indo and Aussie. I'm really on an Aussie kick right now. We got a great Aussie supplier. We've been getting in some really unique stuff. And I get to do a lot of the ordering and stuff, so that's always fun getting to kind of see what you're going to get and order some stuff that you're not even sure what it is and have it come in and just, it's like, whoa. It keeps, so one thing I really like this is probably my favorite thing about wholesale is I'm always excited because there's always something new. You're never going to like, I'm never satisfied, I guess I should say, with like all the stuff because I mean, you always get something different. There's always something different to get. And that's what really keeps me excited, and especially even about this hobby. Like, there's always something that's going to catch your eye. There's always something that's different. So,
yeah, that's very. Have you ever gotten a piece that you just wanted to, or a piece to hold on to and just let it grow out to see what it does?
yeah, I've done that with a few pieces. I kind of set them off to the side, like, oh, no one's going to see this over here.
That's cool. That's awesome.
It's pretty fun. So, and there's pieces that I've, taken home and stuff. And put in the tanks and grown out, and so, wholesale. Like I said, it's a really great experience. I think people should experience it if they can. It's definitely different. It's like I said, it's not for everyone, but it's kept me going. And like I said earlier, though, it does, like, you get tired. But like, every shipment, I'm always excited. Like, something new comes in. Keeps me excited about my tanks at home because I always have something new to maybe put in them and try out. And I mean, I got 7 tanks at home. I have a lot of space to put things.
Yep.
And I have a little different ecosystem in each tank. So I have
each one,
yeah. So like getting a cool algae or cool coral, like I have a tank specifically to put them in. And it's like, it just keeps me going, I guess I should say, like I said. So.
Yeah, that's awesome because there's so many different aspects of the hobby, and just people having different tank setups like you have, and just different creatures, different corals out there, and to be able to see them firsthand because you are like the first stop before like hobbyists see them going to the retailers. You're supplying all of that, so that must be really cool to see all that firsthand and be the one who takes care of those and send them out. But
yeah,
cool.
One other thing that I really enjoy, I get to do some collecting. Like in our local Florida waters, we have one of my coworkers, the ML license, marine life license. He has one on 2 of his boats. So we go out and we're able to kind of like collect stuff to take to the shop and see how it sells. And it's really fun being able to go out and kind of catch fish, pick a few like gorgonians and different algae and sponges and such. It's a really, really great experience just to kind of be able to like help supply the industry. It's really fun.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds like a lot of fun. Like, do you go, like, how deep or how far out and deep do you go? Like, do you scuba dive or you snorkel for some stuff, or it's a combination?
I'm not scuba certified.
Okay.
So I can't really go deep. I do some inshore diving, free diving. I said probably been down to like 25 feet. And obviously once you get down there, you don't have super long of breath. I can't hold my breath too long. I can hold my breath a decent amount of time. But it's definitely harder to collect when you go down that deep because obviously you gotta kind of go up for air and such. So scuba divers definitely have it a little bit easier. And I'm planning to get scuba certified here soon. But I do a lot more of the inshore collecting, like literally right up on shore or offshore a little bit. And then we do, like, even today we were out a little ways doing some gorgonians and such. So that's always just fun, just being able to just experience that and say like, hey, like I'm technically supplying the hobby, I guess, a little bit. Like it's kind of cool just to kind of see that and like see like certain stores get stuff that you literally like handpicked. That's always really fun, just to see all that. I get a lot of questions specifically about like why I do wholesale and like what's the point and is it like even worth it? And I tell people all the time like it's definitely probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. I've literally moved across the country for jobs down in Florida to do wholesale. I mean, it's a great experience. And like I said earlier, if anyone has the opportunity, try out wholesale and see what it's all about. I definitely think it's a good idea. I don't personally think I'm ever going to be out of the wholesale realm. I mean, maybe not. I really enjoy it. It's just such a cool aspect of the industry just to kind of see stuff coming in, handpick stuff. I mean, the job that I have right now it's amazing. It really is. I mean, there's moments, obviously, and there's moments with every job, but it's pretty amazing to do what I do, and I'm so grateful for that. So, all right, guys, Joey left the building, so we're going to go ahead and close this off. I'm Levi Peterson, the Oddball Reefer. Thanks for listening in, and we hope to see you on the next episode.
Thank you so much for watching the video podcast here on YouTube or listening to the audio version. I'm Joey Jones with the Coral Reef Talk. Thank you so much for liking, commenting, and subscribing, and we'll see you in the next one.